Commissioner John Mueller. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Rube.
Commissioner, first of all, let me say thank you for taking the time once a month. Now, this is becoming kind of a religious kind of thing that once a month we go on, and this is something that I appreciate, the people of Yonkers appreciates, because in the past, this didn't happen often. It was not often that we were able to talk to our police commissioner face to face and ask questions that it's important to us, meaning the people of Yonkers, so we can build that connection between those who serve us and keep us safe and the community that you serve. So thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, and I'm happy to do it. I have to say that this is a two-way street, Rue, and I'm very pleased that you're able to allow us to do this because, you know, with the advent of social media, there's so much misinformation on there all over the place from all sides. So to go directly to the source is probably one of the best things we can do to get factual information out there, good or bad.
I agree. I agree. You know, sometimes questions might be a little bit uncomfortable, but nevertheless, they are questions that need to be answered. Those are questions that the people have the right to ask, and you should have the obligation to answer. Now, we often don't like all the answers, you know, especially me. I don't like all the answers that I get, but at least I get an answer, sir. At least I get an answer. So, Commissioner, today we are going to talk about fewer items. And actually, one of the items that we are going to speak about is items that I've been hearing. People are saying, where are the body cameras? What happened? Now, Rue, you were in an interview where the announcement was made at the City Hall. You were present. We haven't heard much. We know that for a month they used it. I know that you are probably considering different vendors, but at what stage are we right now, sir?
So the good news is we're way beyond even considering vendors. So last week, we unsealed the bids. So the public has to understand that there is a procurement process for this. You just can't go to Best Buy and buy a bunch of body cameras and then put them on cops. This is a very complex process because I think people think about the body cameras just about the video and about the actual device, but it's so much more behind the scenes. What the main thing is with civil liberties and different, laws that we have to abide by with respect to how long we keep the footage. They go in different buckets. So it's what they refer to as tagging. The public will probably be more familiar with this term as we go forward. But tagging is when the officers, after an incident, they go on and they tag the incident as an assault or a car accident or a public interaction, because each one of those may go into a different bucket with respect to how long that footage is kept. And we don't decide that. That's set forth by New York State discovery law. So the good news is that we unsealed the bids that last week. There were two finalists, Axon, which also does Taser, and there was WatchGuard, which was recently purchased by Motorola. Motorola had the lowest bid, and we are now in the process of rolling out the body cameras. We are getting 40 this week, and we anticipate all things, if they go correctly, we will have all of our patrol officers, which is a lot, outfitted with the body-worn cameras by mid to late March. So we're looking at about a month and a half. Now, keep in mind that there'll be a continued infusion as we go forward. It's not going to be like, mid-March we chose a day and all 400 guys got cameras or girls got cameras. This is going to be, we'll start the training immediately. It's so the next step is Motorola comes to Yonkers. I believe they're coming on Friday to train the trainer. So they take the equipment, they take the device, they get our training unit familiar with how to teach, how to use it. The second piece, which is a longer piece, is to make sure that our officers are familiar with the policy, which is several pages. It's complicated to make sure that we're very clear about what you can do with body cameras, what you cannot do, what safeguards there are to make sure the officers are turning it on when they should, turning it off when they should, because there is no one-stop shopping with respect to this. People say, well, it should be on all the time. So then I would say to you, Rue, or anybody in the public, what if it was a victim of a child crime, a child sex offense? Would we want the body-worn camera on while we're interviewing the child? And the answer is absolutely not. A woman from domestic violence, a sexual, or if a victim, because again, I'm more concerned about the victims. That's in a police department, the victims matter the most. how they feel. So if a victim says, I really don't feel comfortable being filmed, I would like you to turn it off. We would just ask them to do it on camera so the officer is protected, so the person can't come back later and say, I never said that. So there's a lot of consideration to go into when and how we use them.
Now, Commissioner, you made a point that police cameras is not the same as me going and buy a pro cam at the Best Buy. You know, there is lots of legalities involved in it, how it works, where is the storage, how expensive is the storage, because in my understanding, buying the camera, it's really not where most of the money goes. It's the storage, maintenance, training. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So what you're talking about, Rue, and it's a great point, is it's the back end work with respect to body-worn cameras. The officer, let's just try to frame it out for people watching about how a body-worn camera is used. So the officer starts his day, and one thing we're going to do is we're assigning body-worn cameras to each officer. So they're not going to take one like in the old days. We don't do this anymore, but you take a radio, like you'd be assigned a radio, and then at the end of the tour, you'd bring it back. In this case, you'll have your own body-worn camera. There is a docking station, and you go out, you turn it on when you're supposed to, you turn it off, and after an incident, you are to tag it. So you're to identify what incident it was and why, so that then when we go to discovery, so for the folks that don't know discovery, there are new, very restrictive discovery laws about what we have to give to defense attorneys when someone's accused of a crime, and how long we have to do it. Right now it's 15 days. And people may think that's not a lot of time, but if you have 4,000 arrests like Yonkers does every year, 15 days, the whole game changes when you look at it in that context. So the officer goes out, goes to an incident, warranted to have the body-worn camera on, it turns off, they identify what the incident was, what the incident number was, what type of incident it was, and then it's uploaded to the cloud. And then from the cloud, it's drawn down by our discovery people and other people that use evidence that, you know, so that we can build cases.
Now, Commissioner, let me put a question to you in regards to police response. Okay, because, you know, people are sending me texts and say that they feel like the response, it takes too long. You know, I'm calling, I'm waiting for the police officer to arrive. It has been an hour or 2 hours. You know, because of me doing this for a while, I know exactly how things work. I understand the priorities. I understand that if a car is blocking my driveway, I'm not going to expect that the police is going to get there while there is somebody being stabbed somewhere. Can you talk to us about how does it work? The priorities, who sets up the priorities, who dispatches the police, you know, so people can understand why certain things happen in a certain way?
So we have a communications division. A lot of police departments may just have a desk because it's a smaller operation, but our Yonkers police officers respond to over 160,000 calls for service a year. And that doesn't even count the numerous public interactions, which is almost exponential. You're talking maybe double or triple that as far as the interactions, but the actual calls where someone picks up a phone or a cell phone or a home phone and calls and asks for the police to respond or to report an incident, about 160,000. Those 160,000 are divided and parsed out into 3 categories. There's priority 1s, 2s, and 3s. So priority 1s would be what you would think, a crime in progress. Is there someone looking out their window, seeing someone who's being robbed, or a person who was just assaulted, who knows where the suspect is and it just happened? So those are priority 1s. Priority 1 could be an accident where multiple people are injured, cars are flipped over. It's a very serious accident. That would be a priority 1. So think about the in progress incidents that police respond to as the priority 1s. Then the priority 2s might be something a little bit less severe, or not even less severe, but in the past. So is there any imminent danger or any problem that where the offender is still there, someone is seriously hurt or something like that, as opposed to, I went to the bar, I got into a fight, I know who assaulted me, I came home, now I'm in my home. That's like a priority 2 because the offender isn't there, the threat of danger is past. Priority 3 is a lot of quality of life. And I think what a lot of your viewers get frustrated about is how we respond to those quality of life calls. So quality of life calls are loud radios. They are double parked cars, to your point, parked driveways. And with respect to these calls, they're at the bottom of the list. And, you know, we only have a certain amount of officers out there on patrol to respond to them. So we struggle with this issue because a lot of times the priority 1 calls are at the same time the priority 3 calls are the quality of life calls. So in other words, you know, most of unfortunately, our shootings, gang shootings don't occur at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning. You know, they occur in the evening, going into late night, you know, on Fridays and Saturdays when the weather's warm. Well, guess what? At the same time those incidents are happening, those priority 3s are cropping up. It's Friday night, it's 2 a.m, and people are having a party at their house and they have a loud radio. So the problem is that those lower, and I don't call them, you know, less important, because we try in the Yonkers Police to follow a creed that at the moment, that's the most important thing to that person. That's why they thought enough to call the police and have them respond. So we have to be attentive to that. But we have to be able to allocate resources as well. And obviously, if there's a shooting and there's a crime scene or there's a serious accident at the same time, there are cars that are double parked or blocking driveways, that's not going to get the same attention. We are working on this, Rue, and you should share it with everybody. We are trying to think about ways we can do a better job with those priority 3s. One of them is I started recently with certain areas that are really stubborn and very persistent as far as the same quality of life. So it might be a park where it's the same loud music every single Saturday and Sunday. What we're starting to do is to push those from 3s to 2s because of the frequency, and then they get higher service. And in addition to that, we also do what we refer to as directed patrols, where whatever officer has that area to police has to stop by a given area at a certain time, maybe several times during his tour of duty to see if the condition exists. So we're trying a lot of different things. I understand the lack of the frustration on the part of the public, but just I think it's always better, as we always talk about, is to explain the process and why this is what it is. The bottom line is to everybody, we want to get there as fast as we can for everybody. But if we have a shooting and we have a loud radio, the shooting is going to take priority.
Well, you know, it's good to explain this so at least the community understands the logical behind how police responds. Now, we have a comment here from a lady named Kathy Gonzalez, and this is what she says. Thank you about what we're doing. Thank you. All that we want is transparency. Okay. And this is the start. You know, we can ask you a question. So I think, you know, we can ask you, you can give the answer. I might not like it, but at least I can engage with you. Now, you mentioned cars, so we're going to jump into cars issues here in Yonkers. The races that used to be on Central Avenue, sir, how is that going? I know there were a lot of tickets issued there in that area. Is it decreasing, or is it decreasing because it's winter time? How is that going?
Definitely decreasing because it's wintertime, but we will be ready when the weather warms. But to your point, just so the public understands, and Kathy's exactly right, you know, it's all about transparency. You are going to see more and more transparency. This is good for the community. This is good for the police, because the more we explain why we do what we do, it's one of the basic tenets of procedural justice, which all my officers are going through starting in February, is that people in the community, or it's just basic psychology, people are more concerned with the process than the result. So let me give you a quick example. If someone pulled you over, Rue, and the cop gave you a face full of you-know-what, yelled at you, demeaned you, was very rude to you, and didn't write you a ticket and you drove away, you'd be far more angry with that scenario than if the officer pulled you over, issued you a summons, was respectful to you, explained to you why you were getting a summons, what you need to do next with the ticket, the reason why this particular V&T offense, vehicle and traffic offense, is being enforced, and you went on your way. So in the one case, the former, you don't get a ticket, but you're treated like crap. And the second case, you're given a ticket, but you're treated very well. In most cases, people are much happier with the result of the latter, which is getting a ticket and being treated with respect. So we feel as though the the procedural justice training is really going to help us with that. It's explaining, it's allowing people to say what they have to say. And I'm very excited about it. But now we're on to drag racing. So yes, summertime, much worse. Wintertime, not so bad. It's a combination of things, Rue. One is that people leave their windows open in the summer and they don't in the winter, so they don't hear it. We really crack down on loud mufflers, speeding. I always give the Nolans great credit for being so aggressive in passing legislation for racing. But it's a situation that requires what we call a multi-jurisdictional approach. So one of the things when we looked at this problem about a year and a half ago, and we found out that it was the #1 complaint when we surveyed our Yonkers residents as to what the problems were that they thought. And so what we came up with was a multi-jurisdictional approach. We reached out to New York State Police. We reached out to the county police. We reached out to Greenberg Police. And the idea of that was that people might be angry or frustrated with the Yonkers police saying, you're not doing enough about these loud mufflers, but the loud muffler might have been on the thruway as it passes through East Yonkers. And that's not our jurisdiction. And we're not supposed to be out there like pulling people over for that. So the answer is to create this protective bubble around Yonkers, whether it's the Sprain, because the state, so people know, New York State troopers are assigned to the Sprain Parkway. They are assigned to the thruway. The Westchester County Police, which is a great partner as well, is assigned to the Sawmill Parkway, as well as the Bronx River Parkway. And that's why when you see an accident on one of those ancillary roads or one of those throughways, you'll see those police there to solve that problem. We're responsible for local roads, Central Avenue. But again, you can't tell me if you live all the way in the back up in Crestwood that, the noise is coming from Central Avenue or it's coming from the Sprain. So by having this protective bubble of having all of us work together, we wrote like 1,500 tickets and we identified the high times, the busy times of the loud mufflers, the racing, and all this dangerous behavior. And we really cracked down on it. So it was really successful. We hope it continues. We certainly will be out there. And listen, at the end of the day, we want people to just comply with the law. You can enjoy being a car enthusiast without having a muffler that's so loud that it's rattling people's windows. We're not going to pull you over because you have a custom car, you're a car enthusiast. It's a very healthy hobby. The problem we have is that when the noise is so loud that you're now infringing on other people's rights and you're keeping them awake at night. And we have to speak up for them. And we have to take advantage, we have to take control of these conditions to make sure they're satisfied with us as well.
Okay, Commissioner, now let's rewind a little bit. Because I think it's important. You always talk about it. I have heard you speak about this numerous times, and I like that line. Treat others as you would like to be treated yourself, or you would like your grandfather, your father, your mother to be treated. Now, I understand that we are all humans and sometimes we are not in a good mood, but guess what? You are a police officer, and I expect you to always handle yourself in a professional manner. Now, you always talk about sensitivity, how you speak with the people. Yes, I would be much happier if you give me that ticket, but explain the why, listen to what I'm saying, and then say, look, sir, if you have any issues with the ticket, go to court and present your case. But that does not happen all the time. Now, let me also point it out that most police officers that personally, at least I have came across with, are excellent people, respectful, professional, but you always have one or two that are not, but that's normal. Now, my question to you is, are your officers listening to you? Those 2 or 3 could be the 2 or 3 that leave a bad taste on the community about our police department. They could be doing a better job if they talk to the citizens, residents in a better way. We understand the job is tough. There is no doubt. We understand the job is dangerous. We understand that. We understand that the police is there to maybe enforce the law, make an arrest. We understand that. And no one is very happy. What we are not happy sometimes is with the way they talk to the community. We spoke about, if it's a fireman, we're happy. If it's a policeman, not, because the fireman comes to help and the fireman comes to enforce the law. On the same token, it's not about why they're there, it's about how they speak to the community. Okay, are you giving your police officers training in sensitivity. Listen, talk to the community in a polite and respectful way, the same way you would like to be treated, the same way you would like your mother, your father, or whatever to be treated.
Absolutely. And that's a huge piece of the procedural justice training that we're rolling out right now. It is explaining why you're doing what you're doing, approaching people with respect, and giving the person you're talking to a voice to explain their side of it. And also coming from a position of neutrality. So we're not, the more you explain what you're doing, the better off you're going to be. And we're trying to expand this kind of philosophy all over the city of Yonkers, like we have, and I know you see it because you're out all the time, Rue. There are certain sections of Yonkers on major thoroughfares that have really bad double parking, right? And if you're on Yonkers Avenue and you have double parking, you could back up traffic for like 2 miles, and people get very frustrated with that. We can go back and forth and write tickets, but we're finding that just getting people on our side, like going to a particular store owner that those folks are patronizing and they're double parking, is to explain to them why we're doing what we're doing. They have to park legally. It's better for everybody because it can cause danger. So that's an example of what you're talking about. The overwhelming, as you always say, the overwhelming number of our Yonkers police officers are extremely respectful, very patient. I get a lot of notes saying, I could not believe how a particular person spoke to the officer, how verbally abusive they were, and the officer just kind of just absorbed it all. That's unfortunate as well. We are here to serve the people, and we recognize that. But you also have to understand, and you say it all the time, the police officers are human beings too. And put yourself in that officer's spot. The officer isn't there because they want to go pick on someone. They're there because they were sent by someone else to solve a problem. So I think that we can all extend out this mutual respect, mutual dialogue, just like you and I do every month. As you know, there's no one, I don't get questions in advance. I don't prep you on what you can say and what you can't say. Ask me any question you want. The more we do that on the street with our patrol officers, the more interactive we're going to get. Because you are right. Most people don't interact with the police but 4 or 5 times in their life, maybe less. I'd love to know if somebody ever studied that, like what are the averages? So those 3 or 4 interactions have to be good because people are inherently fair. I'm a half full guy, half glass, half full. If people feel as though they were treated fairly, they will stand up for the interaction they had with the police. On the flip side, if it did go south, they're going to tell everybody else, and that's what poisons the well. So we're constantly asking these officers to really exercise patience. By and large, they've gotten so much better from when I was on patrol as a young officer, where we just weren't encouraged to explain things. We were encouraged to limit. Sometimes we're encouraged to limit our interaction with the public. So this is a work in progress. We are getting there. And I think, Rue, I'll put you on the spot. I think you could speak to it based on the YPD you saw in, say, 1980 versus 2021.
Well, I will tell you that those are 2 different police departments. Okay? And currently, it's a much better police department because we can actually engage with them. We can talk to them. I feel personally that they are fair to us. Exceptions do apply. Okay, back in the 80s, Yonkers PD had a very bad rap. Extremely, you know that, I know that, and everybody knows that, but things are changing. As you always say, the needle is moving in the right direction. And I agree, sir, and I agree. Now, I have a question about crime in Yonkers and resolutions. We see a lot of violent crime lately. I personally don't think that crime is going up in Yonkers, even though we have spikes here and there. I think it's more that the crimes are getting more exposure today because of people like I, that, as it happens, I'm there broadcasting immediately. Years before, you guys kind of had the control of the situation. News 12 showed up 2 days later or a day later, and sometimes they didn't even show. So it was a different era, a different time. Now things are happening as they are happening. People see it as it's going on. And because of people like me, it makes it create that optical illusion that crime is going up in Yonkers, but reality, it's not. Can you talk to us a little bit about crime, sir?
Yeah, we're holding our own with crime. We have seen an increase, and I know we've talked about this before. Part of it is bail reform. Part of it is raise the age legislation. Each one of those is just a piece. I agree with in concept both bail reform and raise the age, but there are provisions in each of those laws that really make things harder for us. So let me just talk about that for a minute. So with respect to property crime, bail reform is the biggest problem because most of the people that, for example, a property crime is like when someone breaks into your car. It's a big headache for the YPD. We're constantly trying to keep this under control. So what I always tell people is, we with our precision policing model know who the bad guys are. If you have a pattern of, car break-ins on Park Hill Avenue or Warburton Avenue, it's not, and there's 30 of them in a month. It's not 30 guys each volunteering to do one. It's one guy doing 20 and the other guy doing 10. Now it might be a girl, but usually it's guys. But we know who they are. And so when we have the tools to keep them in custody, because most of them are sick with drug addiction, right? They are, think about the cycle of heroin addiction. So the cycle of heroin addiction is, it's not so much that the heroin addicts are looking to get high. They're looking to not get sick after the drug runs out of their system. So they have a 24-hour cycle that they have to constantly find more ways to get money to buy, for that 24-hour or 48-hour period before they start to get really violently ill. And that's what drives property crimes like breaking into cars. So when you look at our property crimes, it's inverse with our top offenders. It works inversely with our top offenders. When they're in custody, it's like not a problem. Car break-ins are almost non-existent. When they're all out of custody, it's a nightmare. We have, they're all over the place. So when you focus on those offenders and you're able to put them into jail, listen, I wish they would all come back from the Westchester County Jail, making use of drug programs that are up there. But if they're not, again, I always talk about, being, offender centric, where we focus on people because they're the ones, small subset who drives the crime numbers. I'm also victim centric. And I'm also thinking that, maybe someone in Scarsdale thinks that someone breaking into a car is not a big deal. You tell that to someone who's living on Warburton Avenue working 2 jobs, or a guy whose all of his tools that he uses in a carpentry business are stolen out of his truck. You tell it to them that it's a petty crime, because it's not. And we have a responsibility to speak up for those folks. So with bail reform, it makes it harder. We had some working with the Senator Andrew Stewart Cousins and Senator Shelley Mayer. We had some help after they modified the law last July, and you can see the numbers went down once they did that. Still a challenge. There's probably some other things I'd like to see tweaked, but we're getting there. Raise the age is a different situation. Raise the age is more leans towards gun violence. So what we're seeing is our younger kids, which are under the age of 18, getting arrested for 2 and 3 loaded guns. The problem is that there's a loophole in family court that I'm going to want to talk to the legislation about, our legislative team, of how we can do this. So what happens is if a kid gets arrested for a gun and he's under 18, because now the adult age is 18, he goes to the youth part of criminal court. And then normally it gets kicked to family court. At family court, the records are sealed. So this is an endless cycle of what I call a perennial first offender. So this kid gets arrested for a 2nd and 3rd gun, goes to youth part in criminal court, gets moved to family court, record gets sealed. So now the judge on the 4th loaded gun doesn't know that there was 3 other loaded guns. He's only looking at this incident on his face. So we're going to ask the legislature to close that loophole. I understand the concern about juvenile rights and not getting that information out because they are juveniles and we need to protect everything. But you can have what they refer to as an in-camera hearing where the district attorney can go to the judge in chambers and say, can we open up these records? Because what's going to happen is what always happens, Rue, and you know this, like a kid will get arrested for 3 loaded guns and then he'll shoot and kill someone. And then everyone else are going to be saying, well, how could we allow this to happen? Well, I'm telling you how it's happening. You keep sealing those gun charges and the judges don't have a chance to evaluate it. And then they continue to be released and everything else. I don't want anyone to go to jail. But at the end of the day, I have to think about the people that are going to end up on the other side of the gun, the families that are going to deal with that absolute horror of the kid who gets killed on the other side of the gun. So these are things that we can, we have a great dialogue with our legislature. They're going to continue to have dialogue, and we're going to really push for these things. In theory, I believe that we should not make, a 16 or 17-year-old an adult. 18 is a good age. The frontal lobe is still developing, 16 and 17 years old. But there's a point where there are kids that are under the age of 18 that are a real danger to society, and we need to make sure that everyone else is safe.
Commissioner, I've been getting a lot of calls from some family members that have been victims of violent crimes. Now, when I say victims, I think there is two types of victims. There is the one that was victim of that crime, but the family that were home maybe when that happens are also victims. There was a murder on Ashburton Avenue. I know that you cannot speak about specific cases. I understand that you cannot talk about your investigation, where you are, what you're doing. So maybe you want to talk to us about in general. There was a murder that, to me, I saw the videos. It appeared to be a premeditated murder. We can see the two suspects walking down. We can see one of them tapping on the shoulder of the shooter, pointing out to where the person was, like, that's the guy. So it seemed to us, to the people that are watching this, that they went looking for the intended target. So they thought about it before they actually went there. So it's premeditated murder. And for what I hear, there has been no arrests yet, okay? And you know what I'm talking about, right? The guy that was coming out of the store.
That was right around the corner from Whitney Young on Ashburton Avenue at the intersection of Sawmill River Road. That happened, I believe it was like July, I want to say maybe in July.
Yeah, something like that, yes.
Maybe later, but yeah, that was a real terrible homicide.
Now, it's not like PD does not know who done it. I believe it has been identified. Actually, the family told me, we know who he is. We have pictures of who he is. We have pictures of both guys. Why are they still out there? Because as they're still out there, they're putting lives of others at risk.
They absolutely are. And that's, to the first question, why are they still out there? Because the detectives want to build a case that's going to sustain, where we're going to get a conviction. We work very closely with the DA's office. We have a new DA, great communicator in DA Roca. She's, really interacting well with our local police departments. And, we work hand in hand with the district attorney's office, because at the end of the day, I understand it's not unlike a lot of things. There's so many things behind the scenes. We don't want to make an arrest that's not going to hold up and we're going to lose. We want to make an arrest that's going to be lock solid, that we're going to get a conviction on, to protect everybody else. But that takes time. There's all kinds of forensics that go involved. There's all kinds of statements. And the truth is that we have a criminal justice system that allows defendants not to want to say anything to us and not to want to interview with us and answer any questions. They have a right to do that. They have a right to an attorney. So it's really a challenge. One of the things I want to say about this, because it does lead into something, is when we hear criminal justice active advocates, not a lot of them, and luckily in Yonkers we have a lot of reasonable, logical thought. They'll say, well, we don't want to see anyone in jail. And I say, okay, fine, we need more programs, this and that. Okay, fine, please, I would love that. But what about tonight? What does the Yonkers Police Department do tonight? We can talk all we want about programs. We can talk all about diversion for certain first-time offenders, which I am also a proponent of. That's fine. I don't want to saddle someone with a record for a mistake, especially when they're young, and have them have to put that on their record when they're applying for a job. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about serious violent crime, and I'm talking about persistent misdemeanor crime, which is the example I gave earlier. These are the things that incarceration is necessary for. We are all human beings with free will. There's nothing to say that those offenders can't go and get drug treatment and rehab while they're in custody and come out and be a productive member of society. I would love nothing more. But at the end of the day, if they're going to come back out and reoffend by breaking into more cars, or they're going to come out and go shoot someone else, I have to answer to that family. I have to answer to that guy who runs his construction business out of his van and all his tools are stolen. I think a lot of times we don't think about the victims. I think a lot of times we don't think about, in general, about the trauma and the agony that the families go through when they lose someone who is 17 or 18 years old, or even 50 years old, the pain they go through. They don't get a lot of media attention, but for the cops, we are very worried about them. We have cold cases. We have probably the best cold case detective I've ever seen in Detective John Geiss. John Geiss. And John, people don't even realize there are murders that we haven't solved for 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago. John is on the phone with the families all the time. He has walked this path with them the entire time. A lot of people don't ever think about that with police, but remember, at the end of the day, after the carnage, honestly, Rue, after you leave and you go on to the next story, we spend a lot of time with our victims' families, making sure they're okay, making sure they have the information on where the case is going, what we can do, what we can't do. So I think in general, I'd love for everybody in society to think a little bit more about the victims.
Thank you, sir. Now, Commissioner, fraudulent license plates, the paper plates. I have seen some, press releases, cars being confiscated or impounded. I think that some of that has to do with the fact that the motor vehicles department, it's kind of shut down in a way or difficult to have access to. But talk to us a little bit about the impact of this and what the Yonkers Police Department is doing about this.
Thank you. And this is directly, again, to Kathy Gonzalez's initial question or comment about transparency. So, Kathy, this is what transparency is. Here's why we have a problem with these paper plates. There are fraudulent plates all over Yonkers, all over the tri-state area, that don't come back to anybody. So what that allows people to do is to commit crimes with these paper plates, because once we get a plate, and a plate is a huge investigative tool for us to identify if an offender was using a car, how to track that person down. The plate goes to a registered owner and we can reach out to them. With a paper plate, it goes nowhere. And a lot of criminals have exploited this and realized that they can use these paper plates and they don't get caught on Easy Pass. They don't get caught on license plate readers. It's harder for detectives to track people down because now you don't have a registered owner. You have nothing. It also allows people to be scofflaws. They can park illegally with perpetuity and get 1 million tickets. And there's no way for the city to sanction them to say, look, you can't keep doing this. And that's the whole idea of a ticketing system. The third thing is that with accidents, now people can do hit and runs and they can crash into you or leave the scene. And we have no way of tracking back to see who they are. So you can see how this becomes a problem, especially when it's in a problem en masse. And that's where we're at now, where there's paper plates all over the place and we have no way to hold people accountable. And again, I always plead to people that are watching this to think about the victims. Think about if you got hit and a person fled the scene and had a paper plate, and then you have to absorb the insurance costs because of damage incurred to your car because that other person decided to skirt the rules and not have a legitimate identifiable plate. So we have been, again, not unlike running a parallel track with respect to what we do with drag racing and loud mufflers. We have partnered up with the state police, Westchester County Police, and Greenburgh Police, and just done a lot of what we call crime details with respect to paper plates, where we identify, listen, if you have a legitimate paper plate that goes back to the vehicle, there's no ticket, there's nothing. But if it goes nowhere, we have to do something about that because we have a lot of people that are suffering that are following the rules and going to DMV and waiting online in difficult circumstances. And it's not fair to the people that are playing by the rules to have these other folks skirt the rules. So my message to everybody is, if you have a paper plate and you got it under questionable circumstances, or some guy from Texas told you everything was good, I'd be super careful about that. I would get myself down to the DMV as fast as I could, and I would legally register the vehicle in New York State as you're supposed to, because if not, we probably will impound your car, and then you're going to spend more money on the other end having to get it out of the impound.
I don't know if you know the commission. Of course, you know this. I was going to say, I don't know if you know, but you, the police department, so you should know that there is a lot of things going on the internet, soliciting people to get those license plates. I have gotten a few requests. What are you doing about that? When it's internet-based businesses that are selling or making it easier to get those illegal license plates?
That's a great question. So what we intend to do is the New York State Attorney General, Letitia James, is responsible for things like this. They have an auto crime unit. And what I intend to do is to send a letter to the New York State Attorney General's office to say, is there anything within the law that the attorney generals can do to put someone like a state like Texas on notice, or a New Jersey that also has a lot of bogus plates, and put these states on notice to say, Michigan is another one. This is what's happening in New York State. It's causing a lot of trouble for us. So you have to stop just issuing these plates, or you have to crack down on your own individual dealers. That's the best you can do. For the time being, yes, we do try to find, Rue, who's driving this. Is there one particular dealer? I would just tell people, like anything, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. If you can just call up and not write anything down, you're being scammed. Like, you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing in the first place with respect to having a vehicle that's not registered the way it's supposed to be registered in New York State. But you're also giving someone money who doesn't care if he gives a paper plate to someone who runs a child over, and we can never solve the crime because he had a paper plate and the paper plate never came back anywhere. So this is a bigger issue. We're asking for cooperation with the public. Please, we're going to continue to do these details. We don't want to impound your car. We don't want to write summonses, but we have to deal with this. So I would ask you, before your car gets towed, or before you get pulled over by Yonkers Police or the state police or the county police or Greenberg Police, that you just go down to DMV and get it registered. You're going to spend time waiting to get it out of impound. Why not just go to DMV in advance and solve the problem right now?
Commissioner, on Yonkers Voice, we have a few rules that I call rules of engagement. If somebody breaks the rule once or twice, then I remove the person. And I always give the person a warning, and I say, listen, you have the power to dictate what I am going to do next. So just comply with the rules. And I think what you're saying is basically the same. You don't want to impound anyone. You don't want to take anyone in. Just comply with the law. If it sounds too good to be true, it's probably not true. Now, Commissioner, let's move into recruitments. Okay, we have to conclude shortly because I have another interview next. But there is two things that I want to talk about: recruitment and the 4th Precinct Annex. So let's talk about the recruitment first, but let's attach that topic to something else within your police department. People are always saying that we don't see enough minorities in high positions in the police department. I say, well, maybe we don't have enough minorities. Maybe minorities need to apply, need to take the test, need to join the police department. So let's attach both things. Do we have enough minorities in the police department? Would you like to have more? And how can we have more? I guess it's by enlisting, right?
I'll tell you, Rue, the first thing you and I can do is for next month, we can do a whole hour on this because it needs that much. And you can help me, and other social media outlets can help me push out the information that we want communities of color to apply. When we look at, since Mayor Spano came in, we're doing far better with Hispanic recruitment. We have a 400% increase in Hispanic officers in the city of Yonkers Police Department since Mayor Spano took office. Fantastic. African-American, we are still lagging behind. We understand it's a problem. I want to see more Black officers, and I want to see more officers of color in higher ranks. People need to understand, you don't just walk in and get appointed to be sergeant or lieutenant or captain. You have to study for a test. It's a civil service law. It's not a Yonkers law. So if they want to change, if people feel like there should be some change there, it has to be at the legislative piece up in Albany between the Senate and the governor and the Assembly. Having said that, as far as recruitment, we intend to really change the game this year with our recruitment. Our test is going to be this between September and November. They haven't settled on a date yet, but we believe now we're only in January and we're already working hard. We're already trying to reach out to different groups. I think the issue in general with communities of color, and we're starting to get there, is that a lot of our communities of color are first-time police officers. And that's really all you need to get the ball rolling. Once someone in their family has someone who's a correction officer or a firefighter, police officer, it makes it much easier for younger folks within that family structure, friends, neighbors, and people in the community to say, okay, that's something I can do. So that's why we really got to push this hard, and we're going to. We're changing everything up. We're doing everything we can, but I would love to spend the entire hour on recruitment because I'm going to need all of your viewers after we're done talking about that, is to push out to everybody to say, here we are. We want an opportunity to sit with you and talk with you about this. The mistake police departments have made in the past is they do recruitment 1 month before the test. And I say this all the time. You can't have a conversation with a black kid at a library for 5 minutes and expect you're gonna like be able to get through all the static and all the perceptions on both sides and the things that he may have been subjected to or not, or heard other people have been subjected to. This is a process that takes months to say, come and get to know us. Come see what we do. See how we work. Here's the pay. Starting pay is $75,000 a year. $75,000. With overtime, they might make $85,000 their first year. You know, they get great vacation. I want to be able to make this case, but it's going to take a lot longer than what we have left. And I know you have another call. So as far as, yes, I want to see more people of color in higher ranks. There's, limitations we can do based on civil service law that has nothing to do with I nor the mayor. That's state civil service law. But it's a very competitive test. People on all levels, sergeant, lieutenant, captain. When I was taking those tests, I studied for about 9 months, hours and hours a day, to get a high enough grade to be promoted. So, it's also on the individual too. It just can't be, we want more people, but then we have other people that are working harder to study. And the test isn't, to be honest with you, it's not a great assessment tool based on who's going to be the best supervisor, but it's about as fair as we have. But again, that has to be done if there's going to be any changes, way above our pay grade.
Commissioner, I have somebody here by name Floyd Kirkpatrick saying that we wish PBA President Keith Olson a quick and full recovery. And he is asking, how is he doing?
Keith is home and he's resting. I would ask everybody to pray for him. He did have a very difficult time with COVID. Thank God he's out of the hospital. If you know him personally, send him a text to see how he's doing, but let's all pray for him. Keith has a giant heart. He's got a heart of gold. He's one of the finest people that I know. That's the truth. He believes what he believes. A lot of time based him being PBA president, me being commissioner, we knock heads because we both represent different constituencies. Thank God most of the time we're right aligned, but there are times when we have different positions and we work through that. But make no mistake about Keith. You cannot find a more proactive, community-oriented PBA president than Keith Olson. As far as what he's done with the Yonkers force, he devised his own brick program to sit with kids and talk about just like an open-ended conversation like we're having at different schools, to just have kids come in and ask police officers sitting there in a circle with them about, tell me about this, tell me about that, anything. It's like you and I, no holds barred. Any question you want to ask. I know he's going to get better, but let's all just pray for him. And let's pray for everybody that's been, hit so hard with this pandemic. I saw the numbers this morning. It's just staggering. In the United States, I think we're above 400,000 deaths. And we know that's probably going to eclipse 500,000. So we need to pray for everybody, and just say, let's follow the rules they're telling us to do so that we can all get through this safely.
So, Commissioner, back a little bit into the recruitment. This is what I hear from people on the street. Hey, Ru, if you look at who gets hired, it's the son of this one, the nephew of that one, the cousin of this one, and they all are in the police department. I think that goes in line with what you just said. If I am in the police department, chances are those around me, my sons, my daughters, my this, my that, will join the police department. So if minorities begin to sign up and they get hired, chances are we are going to see more minorities, blacks, because now they have their own family members in the police department. So become the change you want to see. We talk about it, we complain about it, but we don't do much about it. Okay, we don't put actions behind the words that we speak. So yes, I would love to be involved with the police department, helping the recruitment of minorities.
Yeah, the truth is, I want kids of color from Yonkers to want to be police officers. I'm not a believer in, let's just find people that, let's beg them to. No, if you have to beg someone to do this job, I don't care what color you are, you don't belong here. You have to do this job because you want to do it. You have to want to do this job because it's in your heart and it's in your soul and you really want to help people.
Commissioner, I have to disagree with you there, because lots of times I don't sign up for this or for that, not because I don't want to be, it's because I don't believe in that system. So perhaps we should articulate what is it? What is the
Yes.
system?
What you're
To
talking
change
about,
mindsets.
yeah, what you're talking about is exactly right, and you're right. Is the misconception of what the police are, what they do on a daily basis, and when you get to know us, and when we get to know the public, things go so much better. You know, we're always better together when we understand each other. We know each other by name. We have each other's cell phone. You know that, Rue. I know that. I do it all the time. I practice what I preach, and you know these personal relationships really go a long way. With the African American community and the youth movement of wanting them to break that ceiling in the police department, we have to be the parent. I have to be, and my officers, everybody in the YPD has to be the guy or the girl that someone might go to that may not have a family member there, but they have them to go to say, well, what about this? What about that? Can we sit down and have a conversation? This is going to be a very unique recruitment period. It's going to be like nothing we've ever seen before. Like I said, we can talk about it a lot more, but you know, it's a real exciting thing, and I'm going to need everyone's help to get those candidates that want to be here, want to be the change, which is our motto for this particular recruitment cycle, be the change.
You know, Commissioner, you can count on me, but if you allow me to make a suggestion, I think you have a very powerful tool for recruitment, which is the way police officers on the street engage with the community. If I am in the car and a police officer stops me and is rude, like the example that you gave me, and I have a teenager or a family member in my car and is watching that, that's going to leave him a very bad taste on their mouth. And that's one of the reasons that sometimes say, I don't want to be that. Yeah, I don't want to be the person that abuses my community.
I say it all the time, Rue. You know, if we figure out that the average citizen interacts with the police less than 5 times in their lifetime, we got to nail those 5 times. We got to make those 5 times every single time. That's why community policing pushed down to the patrol level is actually the most important. We have like the best community affairs unit I've ever seen. Like, these officers are just, they were built for this. But the truth is, the interactions in the street for police officers in uniform are far more valuable, because that is what's going to make or break the perception of policing in general, and specifically the Yonkers police. So what do I always tell you? The 21-minute rule. You go to an assignment, you're involved in a situation where you're helping people or trying to solve a problem. Again, people may be arrested. You can make that 21 minutes where everyone walks away satisfied, even someone who's arrested, simply by taking the right tone and using, taking the time, again, procedural justice, to explain, to listen, to allow people to have a voice. All of these things are the easy, low-hanging fruit things we can do each and every day. And the more training we get, the more accountability we have, the more we are constantly pushing this type of interaction, the better off we're all going to be.
Thank you, sir. And now to conclude our nice talk, a nice conversation, I enjoy it all the time. Let's conclude with the annex that for the 4th Precinct annex in Gary Square. Lots of people are asking, we need more foot patrol. Well, you basically have a foot patrol now, because, Gary Square is a place where lots of incidents do happen. And now the police officers can be there in less than a minute. Not that your response time was too long in Gary Square for serious crimes, but now it can be even lesser. Okay, please.
Yeah, this is, and I know you got to go, so I'll be as quick as I can. This is an idea that came out of public partnerships. So we're very close with Mother Vicky Schroeder from St. John's Episcopal Church. The sharing community moved out. There was all this giant space. Obviously, we have a lot of quality of life challenges down in the square with homeless, drug abuse, panhandling, all kinds of different things. So we do need to have a presence there. What we did was we basically, and this is where, we have such a great mayor to say, yeah, absolutely, that's a great idea. Let's do it. It's great having a boss like that. And I have a boss like that in Mayor Mike Spano that, is willing to do, these type of things and listen to this different way of thinking out of the box. So we created this annex. The officers go directly there. That's where they work. They take their private cars there. They go there and they get dressed. They have their meals there. They write their reports there. Compared to last year, where they would drive all the way up to the 4th Precinct and have to go back and forth if they had to, write a report or have to have a meal. Now they're all there. In addition to that, we have the cameras inside where they're eating. So that in addition, even when they're not out on patrol, they are on patrol because they're watching the cameras. So this is an idea to get a better presence to, the mayor's, idea, and this concept of really wanting to make sure the downtown new residents have a great quality of life like everybody else, and we're able to address things as they happen. So it's just us showing we have an investment and we're being more efficient with our operations. Years ago, that's where the police headquarters was. That's where every Yonkers police officer fell out of. But as times change, there was a geographical shift with Yonkers. A lot of the factories along the Hudson that used to employ lots of people, went bankrupt and moved away. And then there was no one living there. Now we have a very vibrant neighborhood down there. So we're like, obviously being situationally agile, where we can get people where we need the cops, where they need to be as quickly as and efficiently as we can.
Commissioner, this is the last question, and then we conclude. This question comes from Janice Marie Andrews. What are you doing about police interaction with the mentally ill people? Talk about the homeless in downtown, that many of them, not every homeless is mentally ill. Not every homeless, it's there because they don't work. Some can work, but the money that they make is not enough. But this question is specifically engagement between PD officers and the mentally ill.
So Janice, that's a great question. We are working on that. It is a major component of our police reform review committee that we're going to start building out policies on this. But in the meantime, understand that we recently had a great partner in Lamont Brown. He was our Department of Social Services worker who was actually embedded with the Yonkers PD in Getty Square for years. And people don't know this. And he would go around and kind of bring the science to the interaction with the homeless population in Yonkers. And we are advocating, the mayor's advocating, I am advocating that Lamont be replaced, and we get that social services worker to once again work in the YPD with Yonkers police foot people. And now the beauty of having this annex works very well into that, because we will have space for the new DSS worker, the new person who has a social service, a master MSW, a master in social work with respect to mentally ill and homeless people. We're trying all kinds of different things. We have to balance, quality of life versus what people are doing. We are not anti-homeless. We are anti-bad behavior, and we always will be. So we are not going to accept public urination. We're not going to accept, lewd conduct, people, showing themselves, or public urination, or aggressive panhandling, or making people feel frightened. We're not going to accept that. As far as the homeless piece, we will try as much as we can to reach out and provide services. We hope they take them. There are other things that we're looking at into now, which is Kendra's law, which is a law that helps to deal with people that may be violent or have violent tendencies, where we can try to start with voluntary treatment, because there are people out there, Janice, that don't know enough to come in out of the cold. That's the tragedy of it. We had a homeless person die under a blanket, 3 weeks ago. This is a person that our officers tried really hard. We're on a first name basis with him to get him help, get him in hospital, get him a shelter, and he just didn't want it. There's a mentally ill component there when you're more willing to lay on a cold sidewalk on a day like today, as opposed to be given a hotel room. So, we're constantly trying different strategies. We practice empathy. We will not excuse bad behavior that comes with some of the homeless people, like, again, aggressive panhandling and public urination, things like that. But we'll do everything we can to put our best foot forward to make sure they get services they need. And if they don't want the services, and they continue to harass and make it hard for other people that are just trying to get through their day, then we're going to have to take enforcement, take an enforcement position, and we will.
Well, Commissioner, thank you very much. Let me apologize to our audience that we cannot always get to every question that is asked, because we have other stuff that we were talking about. But please join in next time. Next month, we will have another town hall with the commissioner. Of course, as his schedule permits, because sometimes even though we might want it, but the schedule might not permit. So thank you all for watching. Commissioner, thank you very much for coming into our show and engage with the audience. We are building a better bridge, one that the community can actually talk to the man in charge, and we can hear from him about solutions, about problems, and about whatever the community thinks it's important, and we need to hear from you. Thank you, sir. Until next month, stay well and stay healthy.
Hey, Rue, it was a pleasure. I look forward to seeing you next month, if not sooner.
Thank you, sir.